15 years ago, the general calendar was 66 weeks. I was speaking to a big brand last week and it was now 75. And I was like, how has it gone up in time, not down in time? Um, and also, like, who's to say the product that you create in those 75 weeks is good and people want that product? You spend 75 weeks and return rate is 50%, 60%. So clearly something's broken. The reason a lot of the stuff in the shops at the moment is quite samey because everyone's looking at the WGSN, everyone's looking at Google, everyone's looking at the same data sources, right? So all the products look the same. And that's why a lot of these big retailers are not doing too well, because if I'm a consumer, how do I know the difference between X and Y and Z?
Fair.
I have achieved the best success when I'm not thinking about how commercial this piece will be, but when I'm thinking really about the piece, the development, the storytelling behind. And when I do that at the end, if it's cool, I think customers will resonate. Customers are not stupid, they will know right away.
Okay, cool. Well, hello everyone. My name is Diana Alakaj. I actually lead strategic communications for the development. We helped kind of put together some of the thinking behind the event. So, as Theren mentioned, we sort of, as you can see, a lot of the things that we've been talking about, what we're looking at is a product, sort of how it starts from conception all the way to production. And what I think is really, really interesting, and I'm excited for us to start talking about, is the moments in between and the tensions that exist between deciding when, when you're creating something, but then also how do you have those conversations with a buyer, retailer, and between a designer and that relationship? And how do you decide to bring it to life? So, we have an amazing panel, a group of people who actually represent all of these different points of view. So we have, from the design side, of course, and also retail and buying side. So what I'm going to ask is if you guys could just introduce yourselves and then maybe talk a little bit about your background and also your perspective so everybody knows where you're coming from, and then we can get into questions.
I'm Valentina. I have a store called Tumbao, actually a couple blocks down on Orchard Street. We focus on Latin American designers. That's one of our main pillars and mission statements. Yamil is one of our brands. We're very lucky to have him in the store. And yeah, what else can I say? I started 5 years ago, started doing pop ups, grew very little by little. And those experimental pop ups eventually, one of them became a store. Um, Aside from the Latin American focus, I would say one of our main pillars is also exceptional customer service. That is a differentiator for us. We don't have a store online. We do exclusively in-person retail, and I think that that customer service, that warmth that we bring, has created a very loyal customer base. And then I would also say that a main pillar is experiential retail. When I started, I knew that I thought that that was the future of retail, and I knew that community was really important to me. So we have a lot of events, experiences, pop ups, salsa class, mezcal tastings. But yeah, I think that's the spiel for me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariko Ichikawa. I have over 15 years of experience in buying and merchandising as a retail leader in luxury and also digital commerce. So I've worked for stores like Bergdorf Goodman and Barney's, Altair Group in Dubai, and Zalando in Europe. And most recently was with Hearst running Shop Bazaar, which is the content to commerce luxury marketplace that was associated with Harper's Bazaar magazine. So I have a lot of experience. And I, right now am consulting. So I basically fix retail businesses and I align product, demand, and inventory to sort of ensure that the business is successful and performing. And I also have my own upcycled kimono line. So I take traditional Japanese kimonos and I upcycle them into one of a kind coats and robes.
My name is Yamil, and I'm the co-founder of the brand LeBlanc Studios. I arrived to New York City in 2018 to finish my fashion studies, and I started interning with brands like Bodhi, Willy Chavaria, then worked with Conor McKnight, and also on my own brand. And I'm here now. Thank you.
and everyone knows Theren, so that's good. You're just hanging out with us. You're gonna be asked some questions. So,
What I want you guys to kind of rethink today is how we create products. When I started in the industry, not super long ago, compared to some of the veterans here, but like 15 years ago, the general calendar was 66 weeks. I was speaking to a big brand last week, and it was now 75, and I was like, how has it gone up in time, not down in time? Um, and also, like, who's to say the product that you create in those 75 weeks is good and people want that product? You spend 75 weeks and return rate is 50%, 60%. So clearly something's broken. So I want you all to sort of think, how can we make product better, but also how can we get buyer feedback earlier and buyer feedback quicker and buyer feedback easier? And that's how what we're trying to enable and make the dot is creating a software that's if these guys are the car, some of these guys are the wheels, some is the engine, where the petrol that goes in the car. Thinking about how you can get that buyer feedback quicker, easier, so that you're not only cutting your lead time from 6 weeks to 30 weeks to 20 weeks, but also you're making product that people actually want. And that's what we're trying to help to do.
great. And then actually from just starting from there, one thing is, starting from the fact that like the product is on the floor, right? We're gonna kind of go big and then maybe go backwards into the nitty-gritty. But I wanted to get your take, really, Valentina and Mariko, on when you're looking at how you curate or decide something gets to the floor, right? Like, what are the things that you're thinking about? Because it feels like it is a balancing act of like bringing in something new and also making sure that the consumers do want it. So, can you talk us through a little bit? Maybe Valentina, you can begin, and then Mariko, but like just how you approach that.
Yeah, I think one important thing to note is that we operate on almost exclusively consignment. That honestly came from a point of, me starting and not having the budget to do wholesale and not having another choice but to pitch myself to brands before when they didn't know me and slowly build trust with them. And I do feel like that changes the way that you select things. Because on one hand, you have less pressure as a retailer, because you don't have to put that initial investment down, because you're not buying the pieces wholesale. But of course, you also want to protect your relationship with the brand and take care of the investment that they're putting in with their production. So I would say to begin, I just try to be mindful and um, conservative at the beginning in terms of, for example, quantities. Like if we have a new brand in the store, we have the largest curation of Latin American brands. So we have 90 brands now, but I started with 8 brands at the beginning. And if we have a new brand, I asked for a large variety of items and a large variety of price point, but maybe like one of each, like a very low quantity. And we test it out in real time. So we are very fortunate to be, on one of the best blocks in New York and maybe even the world. And in one weekend, I can tell immediately, like, this is going to be a bestseller just by seeing how people interact with it. And then after that, that's when we kind of switch and do the complete opposite. And instead of having large variety of different styles, we hone in on what we think are best sellers, and slowly we build more quantity. We do things like Yamil and I have talked about, like, can we add a new color to this piece that now has this kind of cult following and is a bestseller? And then because we're still so small, maybe a year later, we're ready to, with maybe one piece of that brand, start doing wholesale because we're very small. Aside from that, I'd also say it's very instinctual. Like at the beginning, I think that I was confused about this difference of just something beautiful and something that looked very pretty in the lookbook. And with time, I realized that if I really connect with myself and I ask myself, would I wear this? Would I buy this? Do I see myself? And I kind of connect on kind of an instinctual way, I make the right decision. And I think that that's because my target audience is based really on myself. It's a mirror of me. I don't think that all businesses function that way, especially like in a larger scale. It's more data driven. But for me, it has worked very well.
Yeah, I would say that I can sort of summarize it like there are these sort of three pillars that you're looking at to decide whether or not you're going to buy. And number one is typically proven demand or some kind of benchmark around some kind of indicator of proven demand if it's a completely new style. The next one would be customer clarity, which I think is you in this sense. But if you're not your own customer, you have to really have clarity on the product fitting into the lifestyle, taste, and budget of the customer you're buying for. And then finally, a buying model that limits downside, which you're doing with consignment. But there's a number of ways you can sort of create a buying agreement that supports that mitigates risk. So yeah, that's sort of the three things that I would say.
Great. And Yamal, on your end, just from the designer's perspective, right? Like there's, a lot of maybe risk and a lot of things to consider when you're presenting, right? Something to, a buyer retailer. What do you think about when it comes to like the risks that you're taking or what you're putting into production and the time that you're spending on that? How do you think about that?
No, I think that's one of the things that we spend the most time and thinking, and it can be very draining to decide what pieces go into production because you're like bet. It's like a bet. Since we're so small, we don't have the right data yet. I think I don't know. I've heard some inventory planners in the past saying that you need to be a $1 billion company to know exactly what your customers want. So, but I think the way we do it is working pretty well. Having like in-person experience, like testing, for example, with Tumbao, like few pieces. Sometimes we test the samples from the collection, and Valentina comes to me, hey, this is gonna be pretty good. And I also receive some data from my own customers. So I combine like retail and my direct to consumer, and it's like, okay, I can produce 100 pieces of this. So that's how more or less I do it. And then from that hero product, I start doing iterations. Maybe it's color, but maybe it's taking out the sleeves or adding the sleeve or adding a hood or how I translate this design into trousers. So it's like building the brand in a way around the products that work for me.
What's your hit rate? So you say like you can tell something is gonna slap or not, right? Like what's
Asking her for like
yeah. I'm like, so what's
You want a number?
not a number, not a number.
Because I told you we don't have e-com. We don't have. You can tell them
I'm trying to like
it's
get him to build it, right?
there.
No, but like how can you tell if okay, this is gonna be a bestseller, like this is
Yeah.
gonna be something that's really good, like how because it's the you because you're working on consignment, so when they put the money in the till, it's not even too it's not that it's too late, but it's already a little bit past it. But how can you tell a little bit earlier? Because that's almost the magic, right?
Yeah, so because it's consignment, we send monthly sales reports to the brands, right? But I don't really have to wait to see that report to know. Obviously, it's extremely helpful once you see the sales and it's even more clear. But when you're there with the customers, and like I said, we're very hands-on. If you come in, it's not just like hi, and then we're not gonna talk to you again. If you pick something up, I'm gonna go up to you and say, "Oh my goodness, I have that bag. I put my laptop in it. One time I took it to the airport and it held really well, that kind of stuff." So we're right there next to you. Um, and customers say things like, "Oh, I love this, but I wish like do you have it in black?" Or um, "I think I would wear this more as a top than as a dress." Or just I can see when something clicks. I think that, for the space that we occupy, which is more niche fashion, um and for our quality, we are accessible for sure. I hear that a lot. But at the same time, it's the pieces aren't cheap. So if I can see a customer that doesn't have to think about it too much and tells me things like I've been looking for a pant like this, or like they don't have to second guess this investment, um then I just know that it may be one more weekend, but honestly, in one Saturday and Sunday, I can tell we need to make more. That being said, we're not asking for whatever budget you had where you were. It's like I started with one small and one medium, and I asked them to make 10 more, which for a brand is extremely expensive. Like it requires trust for them to do that.
But that's
But
cool.
I would like to eventually make it a little more data driven.
But that is data in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Data could be clicks on an Instagram post. Data
Yeah.
could be people walking your shop. Data could be how many friends you text a link to. It's all data in a different way. And I feel like the reason you go to certain shops and everything looks the same because there's a lack of like what the customer wants, and there's maybe a disconnect between what they're making and what's actually on the shop floor and what the use case. I hate to use that word, but the use case of the product. Whereas you're the opposite. You're like very, very close to the customer. You like can tell exactly what they're going to use it for and the color and all of this sort of stuff. And there must be a future where there's a happy medium between scaling up what you do, but also kind of bringing back down to being really close to your customer and your community, and what they're doing. There's a partner of ours, Eastside Golf, really community driven brand. Like they started years ago now. Like it's like a basketball inspired golf brand, very very community led, growing very very fast, and they've found their niche and they've just sort of scaled it up. Hopefully they stay close to their community and they don't sort of become the more of the mass market of the world. But I think there's what you're doing is good, and more retailers should do more of what you're doing.
Yeah, and it is reliable, honestly. Yeah.
Maybe I can help you with a number, a hit rate. You should have 80% of the styles in your store should be getting at least one sale.
Yes. And what about one sale in how much time?
Well, yeah, at least in a season. Mhm. 6 months. If you're a high end luxury business, which has a longer lead time, if you
80% in 6 months.
just one hit. So that means your assortment is right, not necessarily your sell through, which is tied to your profitability.
So, Mariko, actually, just kind of taking from what you're saying a little bit and flipping it around, because I know, you mentioned that you're also designing right now, right? And you're talking a little bit about, how, first of all, you have so many of the numbers and everything like that. So, how do you actually approach it as a creative? Having all of this background and knowing all the secrets of the sauce, how do you do it as a creative?
I was It's one of those things where you know what you should like you know what you need to do, but it's just about making yourself do it sometimes. There's definitely a tension between, uh, sort of a commerciality and creativity. I would say the tension typically exists around newness, and that there's always like the designer side of me really excited to do more newness. Um, Ideas are never in short supply. It's just about deciding what you're going to actually produce and put your money behind and all of that. And so there's always that tension. And so my commercially minded side comes into play and, has to put in the disciplined parameters. And sometimes it wins and sometimes it doesn't, I would say.
Yeah, I was just speaking with Sheena, who's around here. She has a beautiful brand called Abokashi. And I hear you say, and yeah, Mil was also talking about how, once you find your hero product, then maybe you do a different color, you add a hood, you make a pant so that now it's a set. And I would say both to brands and retailers, that's something that I learned with time and that now I highly, highly, highly recommend is I know that you are so creative and you have all the ideas in the world, but if you are a tiny brand in such a competitive landscape, instead of creating this huge collection at first and burning through all of those ideas, not as much as burning through them in your head, because those will be infinite, but to your customer base, instead just create 5 products, less 4, and stretch those out as much as possible at the beginning for really good ones, so that you create this following, hopefully kind of like a cult following And then when you make small adjustments, they buy in because they already got the pants in white nylon and now you made it in black canvas and they have to get it. And then you make one in corduroy. And even though that's hard for creatives, it will create a very strong foundation for your brand. And those core pieces will later bring the funds that you need to create a very experimental 40-piece collection that goes down the runway, let's say.
It's also, I think, for a small brand, I don't know, like us, it's a little bit tricky because I think my customer is also expecting newness, and I think I have achieved the best success when I'm not thinking about how commercial this piece will be, but when I'm thinking really about the piece, the development, the storytelling behind, and when I do that at the end, if it's cool, I think customers will resonate. And of course, I'm thinking like, oh, this should be wearable, but I'm not thinking like, let's make the most commercial shirt. No, it's let's make the shirt, how this shirt can be the most my brand, and therefore people will feel identified because they follow my brand. And I think those, when I design like this, is when I get the best product, and then from that I can not dilute the brand in a way, but okay, create more commercial pieces, but they still will be very similar to like these products. Because I think as a small brand, you don't want to dilute and like water down, your product. I don't think that's the right approach. And customers are not stupid. They will know right away.
And yeah, I think the point of data is not to dilute the creativity. It's to kind of focus it. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the way you want to think about it for sure.
Actually, just talking about that, I mean, I think we have a perfect case study of like a good pair of pants or something that was really working really well and trying to find those variations. I think everybody in the room may have, or if you haven't after this, make sure to vote on, what different style of pants that you can kind of decide what you think you'd like to see. But Imal, maybe you can talk about that. I feel like that's a real life case study of what we're talking about. And maybe what was the discussion between you and Valentina on, okay, these worked really well in the store. And then how did we come up with variations? What was that like using Make the Dot and having those conversations? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So these denim pants, we initially made it for spring summer 25. And again, we were not thinking like, oh, this is gonna be commercial pants, whatever. We were just designing what we felt was right for that collection. And we did different versions in denim, in cotton twill and nylon. And then we met with Valentina to present her the collection. And she immediately said, I think right away, the black pants with the white wash. She's wearing like a short version actually of those. Uh,
Wearing head to toe Le Blanc.
um, and we decided, I didn't produce them right away. I was focused on other pieces, but then we decided to launch them exclusively for Tumbao. We did the short version, we did the long versions, and I think it has been working pretty well. And I think right now it's also like time to expand on like a scale production so it can be even do better, and also maybe introduce some colorways. And but again, denim takes so much time to dye, to see the color, so much money to like test each color. So I think Make the Dot, that's how it, like, basically what I did is present Valentina a variation of colors that basically look real. It's like I have a photo from like an e-commerce photo, maybe 20 different variations that I can do in less than an hour. Is the same product. I'm not watering down this product. It's just a smart way to present a buyer or my customer, what do you like? So Valentina from there can say like, hey, I think this is gonna do well, or this is gonna do well. So, I trust her. I trust their customers as well, to buy customers. So I think, I don't know. That's the idea there, to not sample 20 pieces when you can just sample two.
So one of the things that like we were quite keen to be as a manufacturing partner, software partner, is you actually got to take these ideas in your head and make real physical product, right? Because it's all good and well creating something that looks good, But if you can't make a real thing of it, like who cares? So we've always taken like a fabric first sort of approach to creating software. And it starts with the headers, it starts with the fabric, they're loaded into the software, and then you design from there. So they are loaded in their 20 strings SS27 collection, all of their washers into Make the Door. Your meal designed into that, created the line, presented the line to Valentina. Valentina was like, okay, I like this, I like this. Let's get some samples made. And they had stock on hand, of course, because it's their actual collection that they've sent to us. And it took them for 4 or 5 days to get cut and sold and shipped to the US. And I think it's that like vertically integrated supply chain and the fact that you can get buyer signals really quickly and really easily that enables you to go from hero product to product on the rack in about 10 to 12 days. There was a couple of sleepless nights in between, and Andrew was on the phone a lot to DHL. But and Emily's still stuck in Asia, so I don't know if she's at the factory or what. But she's not. She's fine. Uh, but it's that whole flow that works when you look at things from how do I take something real and make it better and make it a bit more efficient rather than let me make a pretty picture and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I would say as a retailer, I definitely don't get very involved in the initial design process because I agree completely with Yamil. It has to have soul at first. It has to come from a very personal, creative space for the designer. Um, Especially also because if it doesn't, you won't be able to compete. The market is so crazy. Um, in the commercial market that if you are designing from that point, they will just eat you up. So you might as well just come from the point of art. But then, I do start to get a little more involved in, for example, what you said, color, fit, versatility. Let's have a short one. Let's have a long version. I just think a lot about what the customer wants. So is it going to be a year-round piece? That helps a lot. Is it unisex? Is it easy to dress up or down? Those type of things I like finesse with designers a little bit because I'm always thinking about sellability a little bit more.
Well, I mean, it looks like to me too, a lot of the things that you guys said is, there's some of the process, right, from start to finish that would be easier when you have maybe some technology to like kind of help things move along. But a lot of what all of you said is that instinct and creativity are still really, really important, which is wonderful and encouraging, and we should all be happy. But I mean, I think is there anything else I would say just in terms of that relationship between using technology in this process and also making sure to maintain your creativity that I mean if anybody is interested to chime in is thinking about when you are kind of working through this.
I mean, again, I said before that it saves time of sampling and like reviewing, but I think it from a technical design perspective, it saves time like CADing and like doing tech packs because instead of you going on Illustrator, doing clipping mask, doing all this, adding a swatch to create repeat prints on a specific denim, trying to match everything. I think in this platform, Make the Dot, you can just select the denim and boom, right away you have that piece. Then you want to change it to a cotton twill, right away you have it. You want to use silk, you have it. So I think it's like vertically faster from like the tech pack part to sales in a way, I think. Yeah.
I would say it seems like this product frees up a lot of the design team's bandwidth from commercial from sort of the commercial iterations that will actually be driving your business forward so that you can really have the mental bandwidth to develop the newness and the amazing creative new silhouette that is probably only going to be less than 20% of your sales, but still really important to, driving your customer acquisition and your brand identity, of course. So I think that's what it sounds like this product does really well.
Yeah, just curious, would these big retailers that you were a buyer of, how involved would they get in terms of design with brands in general or independent brands? Like, would the buyer say things like, "Can we remove this sleeve?" Type?
Yes, always.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was, I would say there was always a component of the job that was exclusive product development. So that was typically iterating off of a proven style, exclusively for the store or market. And, I would say a big difference would be typically those were only really done with brands that you had a proven history of many seasons with because you oftentimes didn't get to see a sample. So you had to really trust in that process. Um, and and I've also been at retailers where, they've had a design team come up with a capsule for the store. So
Did you ever buy from cats? Not real sample, but just cats?
so that the only example of that would be like a line drawing. Would be with with a brand that we've had for at least 5 seasons that we had bestsellers with that we really knew, and it's like you saw a CAD of a style that you had already had on the floor last season, and you saw a swatch.
I was gonna ask what's the
It wasn't, and, like, maybe some neckline or sleeve was changed, but it was pretty sort of easy to visualize. I would say, I've always come from a luxury buying background where, if you didn't see the sample, you just didn't buy it.
How much would you like place a bet? Like place a bet based on your own gut and say, you know what? Because I know a lot of the big brand, like the Walmarts and the Targets and everybody, right? Like everything's just what's trending and what's cool and what's quote unquote social media and everything. But I kind of feel it's a little bit counterintuitive, but whatever, let's go with it. Um, the reason a lot of the stuff in the shops at the moment is quite samey because everyone's looking at the WGSN, everyone's looking at Google, everyone's looking at the same data sources, right? So all the products look the same. And that's why a lot of these big retailers are not doing too well because if I'm a consumer, how do I know the difference between X and Y and Z?
Fair.
Right? So there needs to be some kind of, I feel, bets place, gut feel. And Valentina's like, yeah, I feel the soul designer. I feel the soul of your meal. She's helping me out real good here, man. She's helping me out real well. And I know it's gonna be, I know it's gonna be, I know it's gonna sell. Like, how do you like balance the data and all of this and having to justify this internally
Yeah.
versus I've just got a feeling that this is, I know, and I know my skill set, and I know that this is gonna be good.
So I would say like the data you have around proven demand. So that's either the style you have like a very similar style already, it sold super well, or you have other demand signals like pre-orders or social media or brand heat, any of that. Those are all sort of different I would say different weights of demand signals, and then customer clarity, so you're like really how certain you are that this particular style fits your customer, and then on top of that like a buying model that reduces risk. So that could be like a margin agreement, RTV agreement, a sell-through agreement, an unconfirmed backup, consignment. There's a million different ways to skin a cat. And if you have all three of those, then you'll feel super confident placing a huge order, right? But depending on what data you have around which of those components, you'll obviously mitigate. If you don't have anything mitigating your sales risk, then you should not place a huge bet. Yeah, you can place a bet that you can offset, with a proven seller.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think, Miracle, but in it's my perception that it isn't necessarily that much safer for a brand to do wholesale with even like a very large buyer, because there are lots of rules like net 30, net 70, net 90, where it's almost as if it is consignment because the brand does have to invest in the production first because the buyers is paying you, 37 or 70 days later, or there can be cancellations, or they are still, doing these other models that are still consignment, but the order is so much bigger. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that, wholesale is not always like a silver bullet to profitability, but it is really important for, I think, the competitive nature of a brand. So I think a lot of DTC brands that start DTC and then try to enter the wholesale market have a really hard time because it's a completely different competitive level. And, you know, wholesale can really help in refining your brand identity and also building that scale and volume. You know, you have to do it wisely to do anything profitably, to be honest, in retail. You know, you're asking the wrong girl because I grew up in department stores. I'm like, no, I'm all about wholesale. I think that it's a great model. I think it's important for a lot of brands that are starting out because I think you get a lot of information very quickly. I think when you go straight to DTC, you can be pretty successful like early, but then I think it gets harder to grow later because sometimes you might not have a place in a highly competitive market.
That's why you test, right? Like you can you can use tools and means to test like very quickly and easily and cheaply these days. You can take some renders from Jeremiah and throw them on Instagram and go style left or style right. And then if there's a 80-90% of a style left, then you definitely don't make style right. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can mitigate the risks that very quickly that you're placing less of a bet when it comes to okay, what the hell are we actually producing? And it wasn't that like 5 years ago. Like technology, make the dot aside, it wasn't really that 5 years ago. But there's a lot of different ways you can do that today. So you can get an initial bit of data and customer feedback that when you do go into production, you can go, yeah, I've got more clarity than what I did before.
Yeah, I think closing that sort of product development lead time gap is hugely important for being able, especially to like build off of an initial success you might have with a product. So like nobody ever predicts like the runaway hit. You know what I mean? So it's always a thing you bought too little of, but being able to chase it quickly is super important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super important. Like getting chase styles, right? Like it's all gonna well, like looking in the oracle and going, oh yeah, we're gonna. I predict like twisted seams. But what's even more important is can I see what is slapping and like what is really trending, and have I got the integrated supply chain to get it to the stores as quickly as possible.
Wow. Thank you, everybody. This is really, really good. Does anybody have any questions before we close the panel? I'm sure there's be plenty of opportunities for you, everybody, to talk to some of the panelists here. But if there's any question, yeah, go ahead.
Given your point and following on that, I'm curious about the intersectionality of some of this exclusivity in a small retailer versus the large retailer, and the things you see like my office is 2 blocks from H&M after Avenue when they always have these like partnerships with designers and looks in the window that are exclusive and then sold out in the week. And curious about the balance of like that chase, right? Like how far you chase those sort of exclusive moments versus that being a loss leader perhaps for leading into other product that's in store, and how a platform like this might help predict how far that chase goes.
I think we can all kind of see that those H&M collaborations are like not probable. They're very not likely the volume drivers for H&M. They're always sold out. They probably don't have great margin, but the point is for it to sell out and to really be for scarcity and to drive just like interest. I would say the something like exclusivity, at least for department stores, and the idea and like newness, these are not necessarily the strategy, but like the tool, right? And so you need to think about what you're trying to accomplish with it, whether it's customer acquisition, repeat visits, increasing basket size. So these are really things that you're using for, they're really tools, not necessarily the strategy. And so that's really the lens you want to look towards.
Yeah. I would say for me, the kind of exclusivity thing happened on its own because of the situation that we were in, and then I leaned in. So, for example, because the brands are so small, they weren't able to really produce a lot of stock. And so naturally, there was this kind of limit that created demand because, things would run out very quickly. But with time, it's interesting how that educated our customer base. And now oftentimes I hear people say, no, this time I'm going to get it because last time I said I was going to think about it and I came back and it wasn't here. Um, or, people that don't live in New York because we don't have a website, they tell me every time I'm in the city, I have to come and I have to get something. So for us, it isn't as planned, as these, for example, collaborations, but that exclusivity has become a big part of our business model. To limit can sometimes create a scale or demand. Yeah.
You mentioned the horrible answer about no, there's a lot of discussion about and how um basically there's a lot of popularity around trend shifting right now and the discussion about perhaps the collapse of the credit cycles we know it or even shouldn't can they well we know it is big problem and you more issues and it's hear how big that is going to make it easier to takes you to more yeah that or microfront not as bad. Yeah, it's like the world we're living in where we're balancing like data.
Agreed. So if you think of us as the insight into it all, what you do with that insight is up to you. We will tell you what is selling on social media, what side seams are working, what washes are working, what silhouettes are working, what TJ Maxx is stocking versus what Anthropology is not stocking. What you do with that is up to you. Me personally, like not make the dot or anything as just a general guy. It's not being recorded, right? Emily's sat in Hong Kong watching this. I feel like, don't say this. What you do with that is up to you. But what I think it should be a combination of both. You should take some of that and go, okay, if 95% of stuff he's selling and he's mid-wash, it's utilitarian, it's boot cut, then maybe I need to do a little bit of that. But should that be all you follow? No, because that's the problem. Is because everyone reads WGSN in the moment, and everybody makes the same stuff, and then consumers go into the shop, and like I was saying before, and it all looks the same, and no one buys anything. And these community-led brands, such as LeBlanc and others, that go, I don't care about any of this. I'm just making what I think is cool and what I know my customers will love, are doing really well. I think at like a more mass market scale, it needs to be a little bit of both. You need to get something that people actually do want and is resonating with the population, but also have your opinion, have your point of view. Like, I'm not buying from a certain company because it looks like everything else. I'm buying because it has that point of view and it knows me as a consumer. So I think there's us as a software where the balancing act between it, we'll give you the information, you do the information what you will. But me as a consumer, I say balance both and definitely have a point of view because that's what makes the great brands great, and why some of the other brands have been a little bit not so great the last couple of years. So yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Feel free to love around, talk to everybody, have some more drinks. But thanks so much for coming here.